Hello everybody and welcome to the first lesson of the IGCSE Biology 9-1 course. This video is going to cover the first specification point and the characteristics of living organisms. Now, this video is tailored for the Edexcel IGCSE course and preparing you for its exam. However, if you're studying under another exam board like AQA or Cambridge, you'll probably still find this video useful. So, without further ado, let's dive in. To give you some background, biology is, by definition, the study of life. And because of that, one of the fundamentals is actually being able to tell between things that are living and things that aren't. To do that is actually quite simple though. There are some shared basic characteristics between all living things, or living organisms, which actually make them alive. And they're nicely summarized into this acronym, Mrs. H. GREN. It stands for movement, respiration, sensitivity, homeostasis, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. If something does not carry out all of these life processes, then it's either dead or just wasn't living in the first place. Let's quickly break each one of these down, starting with M, movement. This one is quite self-explanatory. Living things can move. We're living and we do it all the time. We use our legs to walk around, our hands to pick things up. You'll notice it's not just humans too. All animals do it as well. For example, to get away from predators, or to find the food they need to survive. It's worth mentioning that plants can also move too. It's not the same actions of muscles and movement that animals do, but they can grow slowly towards a source of light like you see on the screen, or grow their roots in the soil and spread them out to find water. So, to sum it up, movement is an action by an organism which causes a change of its place or its position. Next up is R, respiration. Respiration is one of the most important life processes. It's how organisms turn the food they eat into energy they can actually use. It provides all the energy you need for everything you do. Specifically, respiration is a chemical reaction that breaks down nutrient molecules in living cells to release energy. And this energy is necessary for something called metabolism, which is the chemical reactions and processes an organism needs to survive. An example of respiration that's going to be covered in a later video is how we use glucose to release energy in something called aerobic respiration, the reaction you see on the screen. After that, we've got S, sensitivity, or how organisms react and respond to changes in their environment. It's the ability of an organism to detect and respond to stimuli, and by responding to the environment around itself, an organism can maximize the chances of survival, like knowing when a predator is nearby and running away. For example, your nervous system detects and responds to all sorts of stimuli using electrical impulses, and we look at this in a later video, which explains why you do things like removing your hand as soon as it comes into contact with something hot, like a kettle. Next up is H, homeostasis. Homeostasis is an organism's ability to control the internal conditions of their body, even if the outside environment changes, to keep conditions within required limits at all times. There's lots of examples of this. One you might recognize is what we call thermoregulation, which is how your body controls its temperature. It does this by doing things like sweating, or something like how your body heats up when you've got a fever. Let me explain that a little further. Your body's ideal temperature is set at around 37 degrees Celsius, and your body tries to maintain that at all costs. But if you catch a cold and your body starts to get infected, your body decides it needs to raise its temperature to fight off that infection. And that's how you get a fever and that high thermometer reading. Even though your body is heating up, it does that to maintain balance, helping your immune system fight the infection better. And once the infection is under control, your body returns the temperature conditions back to normal. Basically, homeostasis is your body's way of toggling its settings to keep things working properly. Next is G, growth. It is a permanent increase in the size and complexity of an organism by increasing cell number, cell mass, or even both. It's fueled by the materials this organism takes in from its food. An example of this in animals is the increase in an animal's size, mass, and complexity from when it's a baby to when it becomes a fully matured adult. You don't look the same as you did when you were a baby, and that's because you've grown and experienced these permanent changes. After that, we have another R, reproduction. It's the process that leads to the production of more of the same kind or species of an organism. This new organism produced is known as offspring, basically a child. It comes in two forms, sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction, which you'll learn about in a later video. Next is excretion, which is the removal of the body's waste products that are a result of metabolism and other substances that are in excess in the body that could be harmful or toxic if they built up. For example, the carbon dioxide produced as a waste product of aerobic respiration which can be harmful if it builds up in our body, is excreted or gotten rid of by just breathing it out. But here's a common mistake that a lot of students will make. It's natural to assume that if excretion counts as getting rid of waste, then pooping must be a part of excretion too, right? Not quite. Pooping, or the removal of fecal waste, is actually a different process entirely, known as egestion. It's important to understand the difference here to ensure you don't have an accident in the exam and make this mistake. Because again, excretion is when your body gets rid of metabolic waste, things like carbon dioxide, which are byproducts of the processes your body does. Egestion, on the other hand, is when your body is specifically getting rid of undigested food, stuff that wasn't broken down or absorbed in digestion, which makes up that solid feces leaving your digestive system. Last but not least, however, is N, nutrition. Nutrition is quite simple. It's the intake of materials for energy, growth, and development. Organisms need nutrition to provide them with energy, and those raw materials their bodies need for growth and repair. Nutrients are things like proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and also things like vitamins and minerals. It's helpful to know the means by which nutrition occurs in both animals and plants. Animals, like ourselves, are heterotrophic. What this means is that we rely on consuming other living organisms for nutrition, like other animals, other plants. However, plants are considered autotrophic, which means they produce their own food by using sunlight in the process of photosynthesis, like you can see in the picture. So, for a brief review, this table summarizes all the different parts of Mrs. H. GREN and the key definitions you need to know for your exam. Pause the video and make sure you're comfortable with these definitions before moving on. Now, it's time to consolidate with some questions testing your understanding of the content and prepare you for the exam technique by trying a few past paper questions. Have a go at this first question. Which of the following is not a characteristic seen in all living organisms? Is it A, reproduction, B, respiration, C, nutrition, D, photosynthesis? The correct answer here is D. Now, while photosynthesis is a characteristic seen in certain living organisms, like plants and algae, it's not present in all living organisms. Remember what we were talking about earlier in terms of autotrophic nutrition. Plants use photosynthesis to make their own food, but other kinds of organisms like animals are heterotrophs. So it's not true for all living organisms, and so D is the correct answer. Let's move on to the next question. A yeast, which is a type of fungus, glucose and water are mixed in a test tube. The diagrams show the test tube at the start and after 1 hour. What process causes this change? Is it A, reproduction, B, respiration, C, growth, D, sensitivity? The correct answer here is B, because yeast is a fungus. It's a type of living organism, and it can respire. As we saw before from the equation of aerobic respiration, one of the waste products produced is carbon dioxide, and it's that carbon dioxide in the water that's making these bubbles. Now we're going to move on to some past paper questions. These are questions I've taken from real papers, and they're the kind of questions you're likely to be asked about this topic in your exam. So, have a go with this first question. Alright, this is a solution to the first question. It makes sense because we know that respiration is the release of energy, excretion is the removal of metabolic waste, reproduction is the production of new organisms, growth is the increase in number of cells, nutrition is the taking in of food. Here's the marks team to check how many marks you got. And now, have a go at this second question. Here are the answers. Now, looking at the mark scheme, there's quite a few things you could have mentioned here in the growth section and still got the marks, but usually you never know what exactly is going to be on the mark scheme for a given paper. So it's best to write to the full extent of your knowledge like I did on the last slide to make sure you guarantee yourself those marks. Even if it seems like it's not worth spending too much time on a question that's only 4 marks, it's those 4 marks that could make a difference in your final grade. And with that, we have reached the end of today's video. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share as it's a massive support and helps these videos reach and help a wider audience. For more videos like this one on the rest of the biology curriculum, check out my IGCSE Edexcel 91 biology playlist. If you have any questions or suggestions, make sure to comment them down below or reach out via email. That's all for this lesson. Have a nice day.